2020 census of Guam is fast approaching. Call 645-2020 to respond before September 30. Our call center hours are Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. This is your chance to influence the decisions made for the next 10 years. Don't get left out of the count. Together, we can make a difference.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Okay, Google. Hi, Bixby.
Open the Point app.
Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on Google Play or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yeah.
I thought you froze there for a second.
Yeah, well.
That was a dramatic pause.
Yes, it was a dramatic pause. Not a Biden moment.
No.
And just to make it clear, I do not have a teleprompter in here anywhere.
Not at all.
Yeah, I don't need no stinking teleprompter. I can just make sense all by myself without ever looking at a screen. All right, so let's start out here with Jimmy Courtney. Okay, so we start out with the Daily News, which, of course, has not run a local editorial. They do have a piece here, especially USA Today, by Thomas H. Keene and Lee H. Hamilton. And the title of it is Work Still to Be Done. Don't ignore remaining threat of terrorism even after 9/11. I wonder where these guys live. I suspect that they haven't been to Portland, Seattle, Chicago, Denver, Louisville, or Kenosha lately.
Kenosha.
Yeah, I mean, when the terrorists, when the domestic terrorists take it put it on their agenda to terrorize Kenosha, no place in the United States is safe from Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And if you want a definition of terrorism, I can't think of I could probably work out a definition, but I can't think of a better example than Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Looting, arson, attempting to occupy federal buildings, you name it, they got it. So stick with the Daily News. You'll get it right sooner or later. But
denied.
There you go. All right, so let's switch from there to the Post. Gura board must rescind retroactive pay raises for director and deputy. The Gura board might even think of resignation. I don't know about anybody else, but to make a boneheaded decision like the Gura Board of Commissioners did at a time like this, I just don't think I can trust their judgment to make any other kinds of important decisions. So here's what the editorial says. The Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners. Boy, first sentence, and you get the blue pencil already. It's a Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority Commissioners. Should undo the retroactive pay raises they approved for GURA Executive Director Ray Topaznia and Deputy Director Elizabeth Napoli. It's not enough for Topaznia to say the implementation of the raises is on hold because the timing is bad. That's almost like a confession. Yeah, well, you know, the Board of Commissioners, the board, the commission, the GURA Commission, actually passed this pay raise, but timing's bad, so I'm not going to implement it. I'll wait. I'll wait a few months till things calm down and sneak it through so nobody sees it. I mean, was my mic on then?
Because timing was the issue.
Yeah. It wasn't the raise, it was the timing, yeah. It's crucial that the board's, GURA's board, led by Chairman Sabino Flores, show the public they will have nothing to do with retroactive pay raises. And the best way to do that is to rescind their approval of the retroactive raises rather than have to be the top beneficiary of the raise merely say, it's not being implemented. I would have recommended to the reporter that took this interview to look behind Topaznia's back to say when he said that, to see whether or not he had his fingers crossed. Oh, it's not being implemented. Topaznia on Monday said, quote, "We have not processed any salary adjustments for myself nor the deputy director. We simply put forward board ratification of the adjustments." I guess there's no rule that when you're being interviewed, what you say has to make sense to the interviewer. We're not putting forward, we just wanted the board to ratify it.
It's not a checkpoint, it's a roadblock.
Exactly. Topaznia, and later he added in part, quote, "It was never our intention to proceed with the adjustments during these difficult times." It was never their intention. It was the last thing they had in their mind. When the executive secretary of the board, which would be Ray Topaznia, put together the agenda for the board meeting, he put this on as kind of a joke. Hey, you guys, did you ever hear the one about the director who didn't want a pay raise? How about the traveling salesman who didn't want a pay raise? The assurances do not give the public a good degree of comfort that these raises will not get quietly implemented. Topaznia has further stated it was an Office of Public Accountability recommendation that has prompted the raises to be presented before the GURA board for ratification.
We found out that wasn't true.
If you listen to Ray Topaznia this morning, if I understand, well, let me see. Here's what happened. The public auditor was on Ray's show this morning, Benjamin Cruz, and I understand Ray Topaznia was listening to the broadcast, and after the show was over, he had to go through an eye, ear, nose, and throat doctor. Because he noticed that his nose was about a foot long. He walked into the doctor's office, and the receptionist said, "Do you have an appointment, Mr. Pinocchio?" However, Public Auditor Benjamin Cruz has stated, we have recommendations that will be made public when we release the audit, but I can assure you it was not recommended that retroactive pay increases be awarded now. The raises for Topaznia and Napoli have been in the works for a while. Gura's board chairman signed the personnel documents approving the raises on June 23. Good timing, Sabino. When Guam was already in the middle of the pandemic and long before Gura could help come up with quick solutions to house homeless residents who camped out in squalid conditions at the Paseo de Susana Park. The Gura Board further ratified the agency's budget on August 24 to include the raises for Topaznia and Napoli, raises that, according to personnel documents, would take effect retroactively to January 2020. And if there was no plan to implement the raises, why did Gura's management put the issue on the agenda? Who do you suppose that was? Gura's management. Why did Gura's management put the issue on the agenda for the board to vote on September 11? Well, the way these things usually work in most agencies that are governed by boards and commissions, or boards or commissions, the board or commission chooses a director who is the executive secretary of the board. He's, excuse me, whoa.
They?
Wake up, Bob. This executive director, they are the ones that put together the agendas for the board meetings. Oh, I just lost my head there for a minute. Jose, yeah, they. The timelines outlined above belie the alleged lack of intent to implement the raises. So I suspect, Gura, when Bill 151 came on for public hearing, I'm going to stop here and talk about 151. And, I'm going to do my Rush Limbaugh again here. Oh, Jose, I don't like to talk about myself a lot here on the show, but this time I have to because it's about me. But after the last huge raises, I sat down at my ghostwriter machine and wrote up a bill that would provide that no salary increase provided by a board or commission could take effect until 90 days after it had been laid before the legislature. And the legislature could look at it. Everybody would know what's going on. If the legislature had any objection to it, then it would have time to enact a remedial law. If not, it would become effective 90 days later. So I went down and testified on that bill. And believe it or not, sitting right next to me was none other than Ray Topaznia. Yeah. And he testified against the bill. No. Yeah, and this would have been, I can't remember the exact date. I got to look up the dates. I think it was this year.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about it at least, definitely before March.
Yeah, so that would have been after the January effective date of the raise. But his testimony was, well, we're different from any other government agency. We're all federal funded, and the local government should be careful about not meddling with our operations because it might have an adverse effect on our relationship with its federal funding. Interesting coincidence. Back to the editorial here. Yeah, and if there was no plan to implement the raises, as your Gura documents show, Topaznia adjusted salary would increase to $159,498 a year, a $6,019 jump from his prior existing pay of $153,479. Napoli's adjusted salary would go up to $111,244 a year, or a $4,259 annual increase from $106,985, Gura documents show. While Topaznia and Napoli have received stellar performance ratings by the board, signs that community problems persist, problems that could have been alleviated had Gura done a better job in its role, are evident. Conditions of some homeless Guamanians, up until Federal CARES Act money allowed the rental of a former tourist dorm for a temporary homeless shelter, have looked dire. Local families with young children were on the streets. Dozens to hundreds of Guam homeowners who could benefit from federally funded mortgage relief program are in limbo. The implementing agency, Guam Housing Corporation, has pointed to a lack of Gura guidelines as to the reason why the mortgage relief program isn't open for applications just yet. When you call GHC for information about the mortgage relief program, the answer you get, if someone picks up the phone, is it's still in the works and that it's Gura's announcement. And that Gura's announcement was, quote, just a press release. And let's not forget about the recently released GovGuam-wide financial audit. It was delayed by nearly 2 months from its deadline because of one agency's tardy submission. So the whole government-wide audit was held up for 2 months because of one agency's failure to turn in its own audit report. What agency do you suppose that was? Jose, I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count.
Let me see. This is a tough one.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the headline, the byline. Could it be Gura?
You got it, yeah.
I didn't have to call a friend.
Give yourself a round of applause, Jose. Thank you. And let's not forget about the, Gura, according to the OPA's recent summary of the audit. Yeah. And then I've got an article here that ran on the Post. Public Auditor Benjamin Cruz said he cautioned the Guam Urban and Housing and Urban Renewal Authority on Thursday against awarding retroactive salary increases at this time. The very next day, the Gura board approved 4% salary increases retroactive to January as a result of June performance evaluation that was supposed to have been done in January. The public auditor met with Gura officials on Thursday as part of an ongoing performance audit on the agency related to the unclassified employees. Details and results of the performance audit will be made public once the Office of Public Accountability releases its report. We have recommendations that will be made public when released the audit, but I can assure you it was not recommended that retroactive pay increases be awarded now. B.J. Cruz told the Guam Daily Post on Tuesday. Among those in the meeting with the public auditor were Gura Executive Director Ray Topaznia and Chairman Sabino Flores. The Gura board approved a 4% salary increase for Topaznia and Gura Deputy Director Elizabeth Napoli as a result of their overall, quote, highly satisfactory performance ratings in June. So they got their salary. If they got their rating in June, they got a good rating. That meant that they got a salary increase retroactive back to January. Boy, time is of the essence out there at Gura. The evaluation was supposed to have been done in January, long before Guam was placed on lockdown and other restrictions because of Wuhan virus epidemic. The evaluation covers January 11, 2019 to January 10, 2020. Topaznia said in order to address some of OPA's concerns, Gura, quote, proceeded to have the board ratify adjustments. Senators have since criticized Gura for approving a salary increase in GovGuam during a public health state of emergency when more than 30,000 private sector jobs have been affected. Topaznia on Tuesday said he directed his staff, quote, not to process immediately after the board had approved. Wait till the furor dies down. Again, the intent was not to proceed, but to address concerns that were discussed with OPA just the day before. We are confident the audit will reflect that we did everything in accordance with law, Topaznia said. When asked when Gura will process the pay increases, Topaznia said, not the right time, so no date. Tell me, when are you going to go on vacation, Mr. Reporter? We recognize that many in our community are suffering. Nonetheless, getting the board to ratify these actions was necessary because it's already 8 months behind schedule. Topaznia said delaying the implementation was never an issue. Not getting board action with a pending audit release was the issue. When asked whether he needed to tell the Gura board, which approved the salary increases, that these adjustments may not be processed immediately, Topaznia said, the board does not interfere with operations unless I am derelict in my responsibility. Talk about a non-answer to a question. For the record, most GovGuam staffers, when they receive a performance rating of satisfactory, will receive a pay increment. This is Topaznia again. My wife just received hers in April or May while employed with the Department of Public Health and Social Services. He also said this obligation continues even today for GovGuam. The Guam legislature restored increments for fiscal year 20 in the budget law. You're trying to find fault with something that's authorized by law. Yes, I'm trying to find fault with something that's authorized by law.
He just provided Exhibit 5.
Yes. Topaznia's changed salary rate is 159, etc. The document was signed by Flores on June 23, ratified or approved by the board on September 11, and is retroactive to January 11. Gura said, as your crew said, Gura's officials didn't indicate to him during their nearly hour-long meeting on Thursday that the Gura board would act on the retroactive salary increases the very next day. Gura's late completion of its audited financial statements also significantly delayed the issuance of the GovGuam 2019 audited financial statements due on June 30, the OPA said. Okay, so I'm going to give the Guam Daily Post the coveted blue star. There you are. And that takes the Daily Post up to 218 blue stars, to the Daily News, 57.
There's something interesting about that article. that might bring everything to light.
Uh-huh.
Maybe the pay raise and the retro pay raise were just a press release.
It could be. Yeah, maybe they were just a press release. Good point, Jose.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Time is running out. The last day to respond to the 2020 Census of Guam is fast approaching. Call 645-2020 to respond before September 30. Our call center hours are Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. This is your chance to influence the decisions made for the next 10 years. Don't get left out of the count. Together, we can make a difference.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So I've really got a thin calendar today. I've got one new item on the calendar. It's two quarterbacks versus the legislature, and I've got a couple holdovers from yesterday: Jama Manglonia versus the people of Guam, and Hawaii versus Gods and Arrows. So you can help me out here if you ever had a question that you wanted to answer. But didn't know when the proper time would be. Today might be the day because we've only got three items on the calendar. Starting out with two quarterbacks versus the legislature. And, of course, this deals with the override of the governor's legislature. 12 senators voted Tuesday to override the governor's rejection of the fiscal year 2021 budget bill. Only 10 votes were needed to override the veto, and with the decision in tow, the $950 million budget will now become law. So let me go back to the vote. 12 voted in favor of the override, 2 voted against. And one of the anomalies is that one of the senators that voted for the override, Jim Moylan, voted against the bill when it came on for discussion. So parsing that, it seems like at the time that the bill was under discussion, he didn't like it, so he voted against it. When it comes time to override the veto and make it into the law, notwithstanding the governor's objections, he voted for it. That's something of an anomaly. One would have thought that those who voted against the bill would have also voted against an override. Not this time, though. So I'm looking at the roll call here, and 12 senators voted in favor, 2 voted against. One is Raging Lee, who is not running for re-election, and we talk a lot in terms of term limits and how beneficial they are. Well, there's a downside to term limits, and that is that when a public official is a lame duck, he sometimes doesn't behave the way, they sometimes don't behave the way you would want them to, because there's no downside risk. They can do things that would be unpopular with a large amount of the electorate, but it's kind of a mock's next because they're not running for re-election. So there's no risk there. I've seen more than one governor in his second term when we figured, well, okay, the pressure's off now. They, meaning the governor, are in their second term now, so they can really concentrate on good government. But instead of really concentrating on good government, there's a tendency for that lame duck governor to do things that makes their tummy warm or someone else's tummy warm, and not bringing about the good government that we hoped for. So Senator Raging Lee is a lame duck, and she voted no on the override. Now, I was wondering yesterday, I'm not even speculating, I'm just wondering. I haven't pulled out my crystal ball, but Raging Lee is a lame duck, and obviously the governor would be looking with some favor on those who supported her and did not vote for the override of the veto on the legislature's budget bill. So I was just wondering, is there a possibility that Raging Lee will go from the legislative branch to the executive branch come January? I'll have to check with my intelligence network and see what the word is out there. So 12 voted against, and I've got two quarterbacks this time around. I've got Amanda Shelton, and I've got Mary Torres. Now, Amanda Shelton, if all I knew about this bill and Amanda Shelton were what I read in the newspaper, I could see that Amanda Shelton would want this bill to pass, because I believe there's a provision in there that would provide money for her brother's agency at the university, someone whose name is, I think it's Austin Shelton. So I could see why Amanda would want this budget to pass. So when we started out, Will Castro voted in favor, Regine voted no, Kelly Marsh Titano voted yes, Jim Moylan voted yes, Louise Munya voted yes. The Speaker, Tina Rose Munya Barnes, voted no. Now that requires a little bit of reflection also, because ordinarily we expect the Speaker to provide something like leadership. You know, the Speaker is not in charge of the legislature. When it comes to voting in positions, she has no more authority than any other senator. But we tend to think in terms of a legislature by the name of its speaker. This is the Munya Barnes legislature. And as a general principle, the mere fact that a majority of the members wanted them to be speaker means that this is one person, that they have a certain ability to guide the legislature in a particular direction or stop it from going in a particular election. So when the vote comes down 12-2, that really isn't much of an endorsement for the leadership of Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes. So Tina voted no. Talina Nelson's on active duty, which makes it just a tad harder to get to override the bill, because you got to get 10 votes. 10 out of 15 is easier than 10 out of 14. Didn't matter this time. Sabina Paris voted yes. Clint voted yes. Joe San Augustine voted yes. Amanda voted no. Tello voted yes. Jose Pido Terlahi, yes. Therese Terlahi, yes. And Mary Torres voted yes. But now let's look at the quarterbacking that went on here. When the vote got down to Amanda Shelton, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yes votes. So Shelton passed. Waiting to see, will 3 more senators go along with the veto? So she passed. And then from there, there were 7. Then Tello made it 8, Jose made it 9, Therese Terlahi made it 10. So coming to Mary Torres, 10 votes had already been cast in favor of the override. In other words, it was done. So what did Mary Torres do? She passed. Perhaps thinking that someone might change their mind.
The NFL did start this weekend. Maybe she was caught up in.
Maybe that. Well, and you know, I'm really going to take some heat on this one, but you know the old saying, Jose, it's a woman's privilege to change her mind. Yeah. Now, this probably will cause the GovGuam Bureau of Not Hurting Women's Feelings, also known as
the Bois.
Yeah, to take issue with what I said, and it may cause the Women's Chamber of Commerce to be incensed that I made such a sexist comment. And then I even had the pronouns wrong. It's a woman's privilege to change their mind, not her mind, right? So I just don't understand this. And Mary did the same thing on the cancel a primary bill. She did the same thing. She passed after the outcome was certain. In fact, she passed twice. Okay, so she passed, but that still means there were 10 votes in favor of the override. Coming back the second time, now Amanda passed the first time, and she passed the second time. For what possible purpose? So, on the second time around, Mary Torres voted yes. So now the way one would ordinarily read that, if there hadn't been 10 yes votes already by the time it got to Mary Torres, if the vote had gone the other way to not override, then she would have voted no, and it would have been safe. For Amanda, the second pass, the first pass, if you're going to play the game, I understand the first pass. I don't understand the second pass. And once again, I would call on someone who's interested in good government to do away with this whole rotten system of passing instead of voting. Passing to see, especially if your name is Taurus and you're at the end of the line, to see how other people vote, how the count goes coming down to you. Because if 15 are there coming down to you and there are 7 ayes and 7 nays, you can decide which way the bill is going to go. If it's 8-6 coming down to you, you can vote with a 6 if you want to, with impunity. So it's a rotten system. And it's easily cured. It's cured by one, calling the roll in random order so that you don't know when your name is going to be called. And second, changing the House rules so that you either vote yes or no, aye or nay, and that's it. No pass.
Who changes the House rules? That doesn't take a legislative action, right? It's just a
does.
committee?
Yeah, it takes the whole legislature to change the rules. So I don't know why. I suppose that the reason that no one in the legislature wants to do this is because, well, if I do it, some senators won't like it. I might hurt their feelings, especially the regular passers. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anything that might show some disrespect for my colleagues and the way they vote. Kelly Marsh, Titano, answered a FOIA request by saying there are many reasons that senators pass without telling me even one. But the only reason that senators pass is because they want to play that game. They want to have, in a sense, they want to have their cake and eat it too. As an example I gave you yesterday on the Juan Pat 10 salary increase. The votes were crafted in such a manner that oftentimes they would vote to roll back salaries, but there'd be a poison pill such as including the salary of village mayors in the rollback procedure. And of course, everybody knows you never want to reduce the salaries of the mayor, or you're politically dead. So this was the reason that some senators wouldn't vote for the bill. But of course, there was still this strategic voting, this passing, etc. So the aim was to be able to vote in favor of the salary rollback, but make sure that 7 others didn't. So you pass and you wait. It looks like it's going to go down 9, as you were. Looks like it's going to go down 7 ayes and 8 nays. Or it looks like it's going to go down 6 nays. 6 yeas and 8 nays. So I can vote yes. I can vote in favor of it and be able to tell everybody I voted to reduce my own salary. But since the bill wouldn't pass, I get to vote. I get to brag to everybody that I voted to reduce my own salary, but I get to keep the money. And that's the perniciousness of this system. And any senator who would see to it that we fix this problem, although I've never done this before, yeah, that's a possibility. Any senator that fixed it might be a candidate for the coveted Blue Star. Yeah. Okay, let's take a short break here going up to that big halftime show.
The last day to respond to the 2020 Census of Guam is fast approaching. Respond by September 30, 2020 to help our island receive the federal funding it needs for essential services. We only receive this chance every 10 years. Don't get left out of the count. Contact the call center at 645-2020 to complete your interview today. Together, we can make a difference.
Okay, Google. Hi, Bixby.
Open the Point app.
Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on Google Play or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Okay, so here we are again. And once again, I'm looking at the legislature's roster of quarterbacks. When it came time to vote on the governor's bill, the vote was 6-8. 6 against, as you were, 6 in favor, 8 against. Nelson was absent. And the quarterbacks really flexed their arms that time. Amanda Shelton passed once, Jose Terlahi passed once, and Mary Torres passed twice. By the By the time it got to Mary Torres, the first time it got to her, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 no's. 7 no's, 14 present, 7 no's meant that the bill could not pass. Mary Torres passed anyhow. The second time around, she passed again. So the all-conference quarterbacks here were Shelton, Jose Terlahi, and Mary Torres. And then we go back to canceling the primary election, that vote. And that time around, there were 3 quarterbacks. That one went down 12-3. The 3 quarterbacks were Will Castro, Luis Muñoz, and Kelly Marsh. Will Castro seems to be the most prolific passer. I've counted today 5 passes on his part. A couple of them were actually completed passes. So if you want to distinguish yourself on Tall Tales as a senator that I can't trust, when your name is called on the roll, instead of saying yay or nay, say pass. That'll do it.
Ironically, passing also means dropping the ball to me.
Yeah, in this case, pass means dropping the ball. Exactly. Okay, so let's see. I got Suzanne on the line. Good afternoon, Suzanne.
Good afternoon. Hi, Bob. I'm glad you had a little bit of extra time because I had a question, and I thought maybe you could help me on this in regards to voting. I really want to be extra careful in who I'm voting for the new people that are running. And I went to the Guam Election Commission and got the list and wrote everybody down. But is there a place where you can go and find out exactly where they stand, not just their background and stuff, but where do they stand on different issues and things? Because I know sometimes when we have debates, if you go there, you get an idea and a feel of that, but I'm sure there's not going to be much of that going on. So where is the best way I can just find out? Because if you just type in their name, it really doesn't help me get that much information. But how can you find out where they stand on different issues that are important to yourself on the island?
Okay, Suzanne, well, when we get a little closer to the election, I'm going to spend a fair amount of time going down that list myself and giving you my 2 cents worth on every one of the candidates, and giving the current rate of exchange my 2 cents worth is probably worth about $5,000, wouldn't you say?
Yes, of course.
But
I would like to formulate some of my own opinions too and see if I agree or not agree with you as you do it. So do we have any other kind of, I know I've gotten some background information on various people that were in office a while back and who to vote for and who not to vote for from that. But as far as the new ones, I'm just interested in finding out. So anyway, I just thought if you...
The Daily Post ran a summary here about a
month ago, 2 months ago.
Yeah, something like that. It's a little bit hard to get a hold of, but I'll tell you what. If you leave your email address with Jose after we're finished talking, I'll send you a link to it. It's not very complete, but it does cover all of the candidates for every one of the offices. So that's
I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, but the real answer to that question is that this is the candidates' jobs. They should be out here telling us who they are and why things would be better if they were in office.
Otherwise known as their platform.
Good point.
Yes. And unfortunately, an awful lot of candidates think just telling us who they are is enough. And oftentimes, that doesn't mean a whole lot. But the platform ought to stand for something. And once again, I've criticized political candidates because it seems like we're frozen in time. When most people run for office, what they do is they check around and they find the 1972 playbook and they use it as though it were gospel. So oftentimes platform statements are things like, I'm going to do the best that I can to help the people of Guam, as though anyone would run on a contrary platform.
Well, and ironically, most of the ones that are now in office were ones I did not vote for. So a lot of people say your vote counts, and it didn't at that time. So I want to be all the more careful this time from things I've learned with them there, as well as some of the ones that are upcoming. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate that. Whatever will help to get me know a little bit more, and maybe they could be encouraged too to. Actually, I could do that. I could even send them emails and ask them to give us some information that might be helpful.
Yeah,
because I've done that for them to pass or not laws. So
send them an email and say, if you really want to be elected, why don't you call Tell Tales and try to convince Bob that you'd be a good candidate? Because that would be a really good test, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay, I'm going to put you on hold, and Suzanne, and if you leave your email address with Jose, okay?
All right, thank you.
Okay, Suzanne, that's a good question, Suzanne, and I see it as one of the functions here of Tall Tales to go through and do a complete examination of at least some of the candidates. So I have to say this, at this point in the campaign, I don't know what some people think it takes to get elected. And I can tell you this, it's a little bit more complicated than turning in the forms at the Election Commission and keeping your fingers crossed. It's a little bit more complicated in doing that and putting up some signs that people can see from the highway. This is going to be a difficult time to get elected because there isn't going to be the kind of retail campaigning that we're used to. People going to different places where there are large crowds and attempting to address people on a one-on-one basis. So it's not going to be easy. But if you're just starting now, you're not going to make it. The time to start running for this election was about a year ago. Because in order to get elected, people have to know who you are. In the trade, it's called name ID. So if your name is Jack McClukenbotch, and nobody can even spell your name, much less pronounce it, and your name has never been in TV or mentioned on TV, never been in the newspaper, and no one knows who you are, you're not going to get elected. You have to somehow develop some name ID. You ought to also try to develop some standing in the community. Do something that people would say, ooh, that's noteworthy. That was good. I'm glad they did that. They did a good thing there. Okay, I got a few more tips here right after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Flooding ahead of the hurricane. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The National Weather Service issuing a flash flood emergency for the coastal areas between Mobile Bay and Pensacola Bay as the outer bands of Hurricane Sally continue to pummel the area with heavy rain.
We do anticipate this life-threatening flash flooding to be not only develop, but continue through the remainder of today, especially along the immediate coast. And this rainfall will also lead to widespread moderate to major flooding on area rivers.
Meteorologist Lara Pagano at the National Weather Service. Not much hurry in this hurricane, still lumbering offshore, but Sally picking up strength in the process. Winds now at Category 2 strength of 100 miles an hour or more. Landfall still likely hours away. New York City's Joint Terrorism Task Force investigating a discovery of what are described as bomb-making materials at a home in the New York City borough of Queens. A fire reported in the home. The fire department spotted suspicious packages and chemicals as they worked to put it out. One person has been detained. A police standoff in Los Angeles ends with the sheriff's department taking a man into custody for a recent carjacking. There had been indications he might also be a suspect in the weekend shooting of 2 L.A. County sheriff's deputies. The bounty on the shooter has grown tremendously.
Private donations have boosted the reward to more than $300,000 for help catching the shooter. And the sheriff is asking L.A. Lakers star LeBron James to double it, suggesting James encouraged an anti-cop environment by saying after the police-involved shooting in Kenosha that, quote, "We are scared as black people in America, black men, black women, black kids, we are terrified."
Fox's Rick Leventhal. Japan's new prime minister says his priorities as he forms a new government will be fighting the coronavirus and turning around an economy that's been battered by the pandemic. Yoshihide Suga was elected by Japan's parliament Wednesday to replace Shinzo Abe. America is listening to Fox News.
Hot day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you wear a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Joe Biden on the road Tuesday, campaigning in Florida.
Florida's 29 electoral votes could provide additional pathways to victory for both President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, a state where Latinos make up about 20% of voters.
What I have to do is make the case why it will be so much better for the Hispanic community, the Latino community, if in fact Trump is no longer president.
Recent public polling has shown President Trump edging Biden among Latinos in Florida. 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton won Florida's Latino vote by 25 points, according to exit polls. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
President Trump Tuesday presided over the signing ceremony of agreements between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and with Bahrain to normalize relations.
Today, the world sees that they're choosing cooperation over conflict, friendship over enmity, prosperity over poverty, and hope over despair. They are choosing a future in which Arabs and Israelis, Muslims, Jews, and Christians can live together, pray together, and dream together.
The president said the agreements could lead to real peace in the Middle East. A stunning revelation about the coronavirus and some college football players.
LSU head football coach Ed Orgeron raised eyebrows during Tuesday's press conference when he said this about players on his team having contracted COVID-19 throughout the offseason.
I think most of, not all of our players, but most of our players have caught it. So I think that hopefully they don't catch it again, and hopefully they're not for game.
Coach O later clarified, saying he didn't know the exact percentage of players who have had the coronavirus. This as Texas Tech has announced 5 football players have tested positive for COVID-19, with 75 members of the Red Raiders having contracted the virus since testing began back in June. Texas Tech won their season opener Saturday over Houston Baptist 35-33. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
The last day to respond to the 2020 Census of Guam is fast approaching. Respond by September 30, 2020 to help our island receive the federal funding it needs for essential services. We only receive this chance every 10 years. Don't get left out of the count. Contact the call center at 645-2020 to complete your interview today. Together, we can make a difference.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Have you responded to the 2020 Census of Guam? If not, time is running out. Call 645-2020 before September 30 to make sure you and your family are counted in the 2020 census. Our call center hours are Monday to Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We only get this chance every 10 years. Don't get left out of the count. Together, we can make a difference.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, that big halftime show on Tall Tales that we've all come to know and love so well. We are now in the second half of Tall Tales, which means we are in the second half of this week. Which means that we've only got 2.5 days until the dreaded weekend arrives, Jose.
2.5 days till another extension.
Yeah.
Of the weekend.
Yes. Okay, so back to the story about the legislature here. 12 senators went for the override. 2 didn't. The 2 were Amanda Shelton, which I think we could pretty well understand, and the Speaker, who did not go along with the override. Now, a lot of speculation always arises when it's time for override as to who went with it and who didn't go with it. But one would expect that on the basis of separation of powers, that the Speaker of the legislature, when she sees that the bill, she's going to know before the votes are taken. I mean, that's the way things work. You have a really good idea, maybe 1 or 2 questions, but you have a pretty good idea whether the override's going to go or not. So when the Speaker is not with the rest of her branch, but signs with the governor on an override on any bill, this bill or any other bill, that causes people like me, skeptical folks like me, to sit back and wonder, why would the Speaker do that? She certainly didn't enamor herself with the 12 people who voted for the override, especially those in her own party. So was this the Speaker's method of attempting to curry favor with the governor? If that's the case, that's not good news for anybody but the governor. because we depend on separation of powers here. We depend on the legislature going its direction, the governor going its direction, and the two directions not always being the same, that there needs to be a little tension between the executive and the legislature. And when that doesn't happen, when it appears, or when one might deduce that the speaker is in the governor's pocket, it's not a cause for celebration. So let me go into this story here a little bit. The story that ran in the Post. Adelup responded to the override, stating that it presented a, quote, clear and present danger to basic services at the Department of Public Health and Social Services. A clear and present danger. The governor further went on to say that she had contacted Harrison Ford to come out and help her with the clear and present danger.
What was the name of his character again? It's Jack Ryan?
I don't remember. Han Solo?
Han Solo, wrong movie, right actor.
Yeah. He was also in American Graffiti.
That's right.
Yeah, he was just a kid in American Graffiti.
I just remember him driving everywhere.
Yeah, everybody drove everywhere in American Graffiti. And let me see, there's more here. Let's see. Adelup responded to the override, stating it was presented a clear and present danger, and that they were going to be drafting some text to deal with it. They were going to see if they could make a contract with Tom Clancy to help them with the language. Clear and well, what a phrase. How do they come up with things like that? Now that Janella's not there directing communications anymore.
Nobody to hold their own mute button.
Yeah. Yeah, she moved her mute button over to public health. And then the governor goes on to say, it will force us to cut services for our elderly, our foster kids, vulnerable adults, Republicans, and COVID surveillance and contract tracing unit. And it will likely mean the reduction of hours at the judiciary. The governor's office stated in part, I fixed something here. I had to silence this tool. Yes. Where was I here?
Tom Clancy. The list of people who are...
The only two senators to vote against the override were Munya Barnes and Biscoe Lee. Lee originally voted against the budget bill when it first proceeding through the legislature, stating that it shortchanged critical agencies. In a statement following Tuesday's override vote, Barnes said she voted against the override because she recently learned that 80 individuals from the Department of Public Health and Social Secret Services will be furloughed in the middle of a public health emergency. I voted against an override because during a time of economic downturn, in the middle of a public health emergency, we decided to not adequately fund Medicaid, Barnes stated. While many are out of jobs, having lost their income and their health insurance, we cannot take away any individual's fundamental right to live. We need to do better and at least give them a fighting chance. A wonderful statement. Just a tremendous statement.
I got to remember that one.
Yeah, I'm going to translate it into Latin and perhaps use it as my personal motto. The only thing wrong with this statement has absolutely nothing to do with the issue. Other than that, it's a really well-chosen words. Many are out of jobs, having lost income and their health insurance. We cannot take away any individual's fundamental right to live. We need to do better and at least give them a fighting chance. Now, of course, what this all goes back to is that same $7 million. I've talked about this every time, and I'm going to do it again. The difference between the governor's budget and the legislature's budget was that the governor anticipated $7 million more than the legislature did. So the way the budget works is that there is an estimate of how much revenue the government will bring in. And based on that estimate, the money is divided amongst the various agencies and functions of the government. And the governor's objection was, well, there isn't enough money here to do everything we need to do. You're $7 million short. My budget is $7 million more than yours. So you've got to give us more money. You've got to give us $7 million more. And I keep pointing out what we're talking about here is numbers on paper. We're not talking about stacks of $100 bills. So if the legislature had said, oh, you're right, Governor, we've got to give you $7 million more dollars, and added $7 million to the total appropriation estimate, or the total appropriation, it really doesn't change anything at all. Because if the legislature is right, we'll get to the point where there will not be enough cash to fund everything that the government has to do. And then, in effect, the Bureau of Budget and Management Research has defaulted to the appropriation function because the Bureau decides who gets funded and how much. So if you are a fiscal hawk like I am and like Chris Duenas is, you're going to come up with a very conservative revenue estimate. And if your estimate turns out to be too conservative and you collect more money than what you estimated, then you can always go in and amend the appropriations and figure out what you want to do with that money. But if there you go. But if your estimate, if your estimate is not conservative, if it's overly ambitious, you just wind up with a problem because you don't have the cash to fund the budget that you passed. Yeah, exactly. So I don't sympathize with the governor on this one at all. And I certainly don't sympathize with Tina with her, flowery statement about, while many are out of jobs, having lost their income and their health insurance, we cannot take away an individual's fundamental right to live. And we need to do better, at least give them a fighting chance. I don't know what that means. I know I can read the words, and I know all of the words, and I understand the words, but I don't understand the statement that Tina Rose made. Okay, so I've got another Joe who wants to join in the conversation here, and Louie wants to join the conversation. So starting out with another Joe, and then going from there to Louie. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Hey, Uncle Bob. The sound effects, I understood the Price is Right sound effects. What was the first? Was it a pinball machine? What was the first? The one before that?
That's a cash register.
Oh, cash register. The
Yeah,
old style,
I guess
Little
you
House
younger
on the Prairie
fellas,
cash
another Joe, I guess you younger fellas don't know what a cash register sounds like, because how long is it? Boy, it's been a long time since I've seen a cash register.
It's all beeps and buzzes now.
Well, yeah, we have these electronic point of sale jobs and everything like that, but there was a time, another Joe, when cash registers were mechanical and you pushed down on the keys and you hit what was kind of the functional equivalent of the enter button, and the drawer would pop open and it would ring, and that's how it sounded.
Oh yeah. I think a long time ago in another lifetime, I think I would have seen some antique ones. I just can't think of where. And also, of course, there was that British soap opera. That was the sound of the of it. I can't think of what the name of the soap opera was, but it had to do with a store. But anyway, the reason I called was that you said that was an excellent statement. Now, using the principle of algebra and substitution, you substitute that logic from the public sector jobs to the private sector.
Yeah,
the private sector people have a right to have a fighting chance to survive.
A fundamental right to survive, right?
There you go, Uncle Bob. And I think there's a disconnect there. And Tina comes from, trying to give her as much due respect as possible here. The speaker, Tina when you're born, she comes from a big family. I can understand her being concerned about her elderly mother and elders. But I know that she has quite a few siblings. And I can imagine that some of those siblings don't agree with her because they are business oriented. I think her family has, I don't know how many family businesses they have. And also, she's a dingbat, of course, you know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know they say about dingats, right? There's usually like sometimes you can say there's a good one in the. Just
she's not the evil twin.
Just sometimes you could get along with one of the dingats easier than the others.
So she used to have a shirt that said, "I'm not Donna."
Maybe we do well if we ask them to pull that. What's that Disney movie, Freaky Friday? They switch. I don't know. No, that's a different one. Where there's twins.
How about the one where Arnold Schwarzenegger and what's his name, DeVito, were supposed to be twins?
Oh my God! I wonder if we do better if we ask them to switch for a few days.
Yeah.
Her dingette. But in any case, I wonder if they're truly this out of touch, or if I know the fear aspect, but to not attempt to show a little bit more compassion, or at least come out and communicate more. I don't know if that's a female culture. I don't think so. I don't know if it's an older local culture thing. I don't know what that is. But I like to think that we're kind of Americanized enough to where we can communicate with each other and show a little bit more consideration with regards to things we disagree on. So all I can say is, everyone listening, there's an election very soon. And if you don't like what's going on with the Democrat majority, there's the alternative, the Republican Party. So you can think of maybe instead of a Democrat majority, a Republican majority, and see how that works.
Good point, Joe.
There you go. There needs to be more communication. I like to give the governor and the speaker the opportunity to change a little bit, communicate more with the public, because it helps everyone in these difficult pandemic times. I don't want to think, oh, no, that's not helping the Republicans by giving them good advice. No. It's going to help everyone if they are a little bit more considerate and communicate more. I know the governor is getting over her health issue. And so, one second. On the phone. Oh, sorry about that.
Hey, which drive-through are you in, another Joe?
The drive-through of life.
Yeah.
Okay, so
is Jack there?
I better go look, because I don't want to make him angry. What was it he did to that other?
He did a remote call from one of the drive-throughs, one of the restaurants. It was one of the highlights of Tall Tales that week.
Was it he took the other guy's lunch or dinner?
Yeah, he was talking to me, and he was ordering his dinner at the same time.
Yeah. Don't meet that guy, man. He's like the next most dangerous guy in the room after was our Carl, is it?
Our Carl, the most dangerous man in the room.
So our Jack is the next dangerous guy, most dangerous guy. I don't know why, but he reminds me of Elliot from E.T. Maybe it's just coincidental that he has these movie star looks. But anyway, Uncle Bob, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Just attempting to appeal to our leaders. Please show some, at least attempt to give the appearance of showing more compassion, and reach out to the public and show that you want to give everyone a fighting chance to survive during this pandemic times, not just the public sector.
Not just the government of Guam. Yeah, our
there
people.
You go. Oh, real quick, real last question, Uncle Bob. Have you heard anything about our Archbishop? Is he going to? Is he better? Is he going to be back soon? What's going on?
I don't know.
September is supposed to be, so I expect towards the end of the month we may hear from him.
All right.
Okay, pray to God, everything works out good. Hey, thanks for your time, Uncle Bob. Appreciate it. I'll just keep listening.
Okay, another Joe. So one more time here, and then I'm going to go to Louis. While many are out of jobs, having lost their income and their health insurance, we cannot take away an individual's fundamental right to live. We need to do better and at least give them a fighting chance. Fundamental right to live. Okay, Louis, I'm going to take a break for the seventh inning stretch, and then I'll come back to you, and after that, our Fred.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The last day to respond to the 2020 Census of Guam is fast approaching. Respond by September 30, 2020 to help our island receive the federal funding it needs for essential services. We only receive this chance every 10 years. Don't get left out of the count. Contact the call center at 645-2020 to complete your interview today. Together, we can make a difference.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Okay, so the big halftime show, as you were, halftime show, seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, nobody in the ballpark. And I go from Wrigley Field straight to Louis. Good afternoon, Louis.
Hey, afternoon, Bob. As I was listening to your discussion a few minutes ago about the so-called disagreement between the legislature and the governor regarding what the budget should be, what Einstein used to do comes to mind. He was famous for his thought experiments, coming up with these wonderful ideas about quantum mechanics and, prior to quantum mechanics, by just using his head. So I want you to put your Einstein thinking hat on and help me figure something out. My understanding is that historically there's always been the legislature's budget projection in terms of what the income of Guam is going to be that the government can tap into, and then we'd have the executive branch coming up with their projection, and the argument would be, which one did you use? Well, it occurs to me that the way Einstein would approach this is to say the simple idea is if the legislature is responsible for passing a budget, only their projection counts. it's the only one that should be considered, because if they have the responsibility for dishing out the money responsibly, it's got to be their projection. Because if it's somebody else's projection, that other person doesn't have the responsibility for developing the budget. So it doesn't matter what their projection is, because they want someone to allocate money in a way for which they don't have responsibility. I mean, is this making sense, that the idea of the executive branch coming up with a projection for the budget, to me, doesn't make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Louis. Then of course there's always the political dimension, and as a matter of partisan politics, if you have a Democrat governor and a Republican, as we're in a Democrat legislature, if you're a Republican, the battle is over the projected revenue. And if you're a Republican, you can't go wrong by voting against the budget, because you don't own the budget. And on the other side, if the legislature goes along with the governor's revenue estimate and it is overly optimistic, then the governor owns it and blame can be cast on the governor. And unfortunately, I think it's this kind of thought process that controls the day, as opposed to a logical undertaking, like if there is a pie to divide, the one who gets to pick, one guy does the cutting and the other guy does the choosing, and that way you come up with pretty equitable distribution. But in the partisan political setting, it's more like who gets stuck with the blame. So at this stage of the game, obviously the governor wants to stick the legislature with the blame. You're not giving us enough money to run the government.
I hear that, but again, my leaning has always been that within reason, and that's a debatable term, the more conservative budget projection is the one that should always be used, because, in the past, if not in the present, GovGuam has had the tendency to allocate more money than it actually had available to spend, and that's just something that's got to stop.
It's true. So, and I agree with you, and that's why I consider myself a fiscal hawk. And when I'm looking around on the ballot, I'm looking for fiscal hawks. But another part of the equation is when does the hurt arrive? So right now the governor is trying to make the hurt arrive today, because she's saying, you didn't give us enough money, and therefore I got to lay off people at public health, and old people are not going to be accommodated, and the swimming pool is going to freeze over, and on and on and on. So that hurt arrives today. The hurt caused by overestimating the amount of anticipated revenue probably won't occur until 6 months down the road. So unfortunately, short-sightedness is often mistaken for clear vision in the budgetary game.
Right. Well, as we both know, the problem with overestimating a budget, whereby you delay the hurt until later, is sometimes you put into effect processes that we think will continue forever, and then when they don't, because of lack of funding, everybody's, well, wait a minute, how did this happen? Well, it could have been predicted that would have been happening right from the beginning if a more conservative projection was used.
Exactly. Politics, there's room for logic in politics, partisan politics, but very often logic does not control the day.
Well, okay, I hear what you're saying, and inevitably that's why we get into these arguments that really shouldn't even be occurring.
Exactly, Louis.
Yeah. Well, one day, maybe the light will shine.
Maybe.
And I mean that in the sense of the light of logic.
There you go. Okay, Louis, thanks for calling.
Take care, Bob.
Okay, I'm going to go next to our Fred, and then I've got a real fiscal hawk waiting in the green room, probably chomping at the bit. to come in here and tell us about fiscal discipline. So, Chris, as soon as our Fred lays it on me, you're next. Hello, our Fred.
Hey, good evening, Bob. First of all, thank you for that. The homework, you got an A+ on the Dunning-Kruger's effect.
All
A+.
right.
Yep, and maybe once a week, I would hope you would maybe just read that same homework out to the public once a week.
Maybe I ought to give a weekly Dunning-Kruger award in the process of explaining what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, huh?
Perfect, and you can label who gets it, which politician gets it that week.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that, Fred. Thanks for that's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and that'd be awesome. And the word complacency, I think, no, I hate the word, I think. Complacency is what Guam is, actually. Everyone is too comfortable and comfortable being taken advantage of, actually. Yeah. You know, where's our AG, our Attorney General? I thought that the Attorney General, and maybe you can shed some light on this after, I thought the Attorney General is the one that is supposed to...
That's Jose's comment on the Attorney General. He hears the crickets.
Yeah, exactly. So I shouldn't even ask where anymore since you already explained that. It's the Attorney General's job to oversee the government and how they're executing their decision-making skills. And is that right? They're supposed to be overseeing?
Well, he's the chief legal advisor for the government of Guam. Whether that or not that means oversight, maybe in certain cases, maybe not. I get the
He's not supposed to guide?
I get the feeling, though, that this Attorney General oftentimes just doesn't want to get involved, unless there's military or Air Force guys involved.
Or a class action.
Well, that's not his job description, though. We elected him. His job description is to oversee and give legal advice to the government on what they can and can't do. Am I right?
Well, you would think that if we had a general of the railroads who had the same was kind of analogous to our Attorney General, when he saw that a train wreck was going to happen, he would put up the red signal. And,
right.
And you know, watching this whole quarantine thing unfold, that was just a train wreck waiting for the train to get to the intersection. Right. And our Attorney General didn't get involved at all.
Right. Yeah. No, he did. He said that the courts were micromanaging. Right. So the courts were micromanaging public health or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas the courts, actually, I think the courts did what he should have done. He should have given his input on what they're doing on quarantining, the lockdown, continuous, and even till right now he could give his opinion and where the government should heed his opinion and act accordingly in a legal sense without infringing on the public's constitutional rights. This thing continuously we're discussing about the right to liberty and pursuit of happiness is being infringed upon. And Bob, how many days are going to go by where we keep discussing it? And it seems like our right to liberty and pursuit of happiness, which includes making a proper living and so forth, is not going to. We won't get our right until the governor decides when we get our right, and then when it's lifted, it's not the way it should be done. The way it should be done is like someone intercedes and says, all right, this is illegal and you cannot continue this way. Effective immediately, someone has to supersede and come in. And I'm thinking that person is Attorney General or the legislature to vote and override.
Well, on the quarantines, etc. Eight votes can take away the governor's magic powers, and it's time. She's abused her magic powers.
All right. Well, if those 8 people are not sleeping right now, I mean, they should be listening to what you're saying. Because you're a judge, you know the law, and looks like I think you are actually you know how Ken Leon Guerrero is the other governor?
Uh-huh.
You're like the other attorney general. I think you should be called the other attorney general.
Okay.
Like there's the other Joe.
We
You're
got
the
another.
other
We got
attorney.
another Joe. Yeah.
Bob, from today, you're the other AG.
Maybe I could be our AG, huh, Fred?
Our AG.
Uh-huh.
There you go. I think we just came to some new stuff here today. So you pass legal advice and opinion based on Constitution and what's legal and not. I mean, that's what our AG should be doing, and legislature should be doing. You know, when when our freedoms are given back to us, it's not a day to celebrate, because these are freedoms that we have already, and they're being taken away. And when we get it back, because they give it back to us, that's not the day to celebrate and be like, oh, we got it back now. Great governor.
It's like the analogy I used a couple of weeks ago, where a gentleman was sitting on the side of the road, hitting himself on the head with a hammer, and another person came up and said, "Why are you hitting yourself on the head with your hammer like that?" And the guy said, "Because it feels so good when I stop."
Oh.
It's the same process, huh, Fred?
Should have been that one.
Mm-hmm.
So, there you go. So, Bob, I mean, each day goes by, our rights are being infringed on. And right this second, actually, all this lockdown and all of this stuff should be lifted. People need to go to the movies, go to the bars and de-stress and go dancing and go to the restaurants and support them and eat and buy new clothes and shoes. Some people, that's therapy for them. Not everybody gets therapy buying celery and lettuce at the grocery store. Some people want to watch a nice movie out in public.
I'm with you on that, Fred.
Well, RAG, please give your guidance to the island.
I'll do that.
Thank you, RAG.
Okay, thanks for calling, Fred.
Right.
So I guess, I don't know, is that a promotion or a demotion? Being the host of Tall Tales, pretty lofty position. Chris, we're gonna head down the home stretch, and I'm gonna take you down the home stretch with me.
The last day to respond to the 2020 Census of Guam is fast approaching. Respond by September 30, 2020 to help our island receive the federal funding it needs for essential services. We only receive this chance every 10 years. Don't get left out of the count. Contact the call center at 645-2020 to complete your interview today. Together, we can make a difference.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm going to go from there to the clubhouse of the Dunning-Kruger Club. I've got a post online, Facebook here, about the Dunning-Kruger Club, Fred. You kind of started it all. But the first rule of the Dunning-Kruger Club is that you don't know that you're in the Dunning-Kruger Club.
We need a laugh track. That one's awesome.
Oh, okay, Chris. You've perhaps been accused of this or that in your career in political life, but I don't think anyone ever accused you of being a member of the Dunning-Kruger Club.
I don't believe so, Your Honor, Honorable Marine, Senator, and my favorite talk show host, and now our Attorney General. In listening, because I'm a fan of all the callers of Tall Tales, all the callers on the point in general, because I've also hosted a show or two there. But Bob, in particular, our Fred is he's a hard grader, and I think that he's spot on. Our Carl, who I've talked to on Facebook back and forth, another hard grader, and I appreciate his discussions with me. But I think we need to get Louis on a little bit more, because I think we need to have an R. Louis, because when I listened to him, he was spot on about exactly what the tripart government, particularly the legislative branch and executive branch, should be doing. But I also want to do a little bit of house cleaning, Bob.
Sure.
I know you're proud of your humility.
Very proud.
But I think that you have not done something in demonstrating that pride and your humility, because I think you deserve a blue star.
Moi?
When this whole budget fiasco and this latest tirade by our administration happened, I listened clearly, and I prodded some of my friends at the legislature to do precisely what you discussed and what I thought was absolutely spot on, because it was in my mind as well. The only thing the legislature didn't do, according to Bob's Blue Star, was they didn't gavel out the governor's session and go in and go straight to the override. They took a little detour and had a circuit.
Right.
But other than that, if we play back the Bob Klitzkie Tall Tales show, I believe it would have almost been spot on to go in there, reject that pony show, but they had a little one, and then get to the real business of overriding the veto. Now, I heard a caller earlier, so I wanted to see if I could maybe campaign a little to her. Through, as far as I'm concerned, the Tall Tales, I hope I could be on it, but even if I'm not, I will still pretty much vote for who Tall Tales puts out to vote for. But the caller was right to say, where do these candidates stand? What do they stand for? I want to make two commitments here on Tall Tales. One is for a part-time senators. The legislature will still be a full-time function in order to maintain its ability to balance itself against the administration. But senators would be pretty much like CCU members now, and receive a stipend and be individuals who are citizen senators and with the moral authority and not taking a huge salary. I know $55,000 is not a huge salary compared to directors and other positions now, but I think most people can run their business, run their lives, make their livelihood somewhere else, and serve in the legislature. First commitment. The second commitment, Bob, is the next time, and it doesn't matter what administration, if I'm able to serve, I will say definitely in the 36th. The next time an administration threatens any of the key responsibilities of the government, which is public health, public safety, or healthcare, the first bill that I will introduce, to whatever amount they say they need, is to deappropriate that money from the governor's office. Because if you're a part-time senator, not concerned about drawing a salary, not concerned about the politics of the issue. You will go straight to the heart of the matter. And that is, you signed up for the job. You swore with your hand up in the air that you will protect the citizens of Guam, the people of Guam. And so if you are going to shut down anything, shut down your office first.
Makes sense, Chris.
Doesn't that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense.
I mean, being a co-equal branch of government, please. I mean, I want to give away, if I can. I know this is not my authority, but I want to recommend 2 blue stars.
2 blue stars, okay.
Maybe 3 to the Dog and Pony Show session. First is Senator Therese Talai. Senator Therese Talai was an absolute pitbull and demonstrated exactly what it means to say enough is enough. We've given you a budget, live within it, and if you need some more money, come and see us, but you have everything you need to work with going forward. Please do not instill fear in our people in order to get a political advantage. The second, of course, was the continued efforts of our, of Jim Moylan. I think that he has been steadfast with his entire term, standing up to the administration and also making, putting forward conservative policies that can really realign the government and live within our means, and also, promote helping our businesses, which are suffering out there. The third is Steve Guerrero. I know that must have been tough for him to be on that panel, especially with his boss, the gentleman who oversees the budget.
Are you talking about Steve Guerrero's boss? I think that's Joe St. Augustine.
But Steve was steadfast. He didn't back down. He was challenged, but he was also exhorted from those who knew that BBM, Office of Finance and Budget numbers were right and they're strong. And he has the history. He has the years of service to be able to stand there. I believe 30 years in the government, and he was a BBMR director. He knows his onions. He knows his numbers, and he would not flinch, even when members from the administration would send a slight or two his way. But he dug down and said, no, these are the numbers, and I've been there. I've done that. These numbers are good, and the administration has the tools it needs to go forward.
And Steve's got a fair amount of credibility, having at one time been one of the gnomes of BBMR.
Absolutely. No question about it. And I've gone to see Steve before, and being in the position of having to run an agency, to run things, and you every once in a while you got to go downtown and sit down. And I'm telling you, he's a no nonsense guy. I've supported him for senator before. I voted for him. Steve is you're not going to get anything by him. You could tell him you need this, you need that, whatever, but he'll tell you, you know what? Here's your budget, and live with it, and come back to me when you can demonstrate a real emergency. No nonsense guy. And I really appreciated his putting his nose out there and just going, come and get it, because nobody could tell him that he was wrong. And I appreciate what Steve did.
So it's Steve and Therese, and who was the third one, Chris?
Jim Moylan.
Say again?
Jim Moylan, Senator Moylan, I think that, led the charge. Tello was in there, fighting fiercely as well.
He led the charge in 2 directions, though. First, he voted against the bill, and then he votes for the override.
Absolutely. So that's a double whammy. So he definitely demonstrated his steadfastness. There's no question about it. He was very, very clear that he was not going to take he voted against what was passed by the legislature, from what I understand, because he wanted something even more conservative.
Okay.
But he was pushing for the override.
Okay. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. So I've seen situations where senators will make several amendments to a bill and then vote against it, trying to minimize the downside of what they think is a less than favorable bill. So I guess it's that same kind of reasoning process.
I think so, because I knew that from watching him on the floor and what he was trying to do. He wanted nothing to do with a budget that wasn't even more conservative of what was passed, and I'll stand on that because I did watch the process extensively, and I know what you mean by kind of trying to have it both ways in terms of the vote. But I know that Jim stood up for even things he was trying to get accomplished in there. And so even though it was the better of what the governor was trying to propose, his major objection that he stood on was, this is still not good enough. I don't think there's enough constraints in this. So I think he was, from what I understand, and the record would show, that he was trying to be more conservative, Bob.
Okay. And then when it came time for the override, that was the only game in town, so he went for it. That makes sense.
Absolutely. He voted for that bill. In fact, I wish what would have happened was all of the Republicans would have voted no in the first round to try to keep it even more conservative. But from what I understand from many of them, they said this is the best we're going to get. They reduced the transfer authority from 30% down to 15%. They maneuvered in some other areas to where it really put the constraints and the clamps down on this budget. And then from what I understand, going forward, some of them felt it was the best that they could get. But from what I understand from Jim Moylan straight away, is like, even if we got those constraints, I'm still not happy with it, so I'm going to vote no. And then he voted yes, of course, on the override, because he figured, that's all we got left. There was 2 weeks left, and I don't think that they would have went in and deliberated another budget.
Let me ask about another member, Chris. What do you think about the Speaker's inability to herd the cats in the right direction?
I just really think that is a straight out, demonstration of not being able to be in touch with, first and foremost, what's going on. And then second, it's just a demonstration of leadership. In fact, I will say that the real speaker on the floor from this majority was Therese.
The de facto speaker.
But it was clear, Bob, that her ability to articulate and her ability to basically say, you can send whatever press releases you want to send down. You can accuse me of not doing this, not doing that, but I'm going to stand steadfast. And she was the most engaging with Steve Guerrero and OFD in general, to basically once again lay out the totality of what the legislature passed, and really show that there is no reason why you cannot work within the ceiling that's been given. And so to me, many of the votes went the way they went, because who's going to go against that?
Uh-huh.
That was just too much logic.
The system working the way it's supposed to work, huh?
But like you said, it's really an original grind, because obviously, they're both Democrats.
Yeah.
But you saw that when things can be thrown to the wayside and senators can just stand up and say, no, I've had enough of this, and I'm not going to threaten our people. I'm going to say I'm going to be here every day of the year to make sure we have what we need to do, our fundamental responsibility. He didn't flinch in that issue.
I got to interrupt
you. Like DJ Cruz, I've had difference with DJ, but his taking Ray's spots into the woodshed is refreshing.
Hey, Chris, I got to interrupt you. As the show comes to an end, I'm looking out of the window and seeing a fiscal hawk flying into the horizon. Thanks for calling, Chris.
Ready to land, sir. Take care.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Starting to feel Sally's fury. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Hurricane conditions now being felt along the Gulf Coast of Alabama.
The conditions are very bad right now. We are being hammered. It's been this way for about an hour to 2 hours. You can hear that howling wind right now. The trees are taking a beating. The storm surge now coming ashore here as well.
That's reporter Tyler Finger to Fox 10 in Mobile in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Sally has re-strengthened into a Category 2 hurricane with winds of 100 miles an hour, but the winds aren't the biggest concern.